Good morning, YouTube. This is LA Prepper, and today we are going to talk about a story of a man who went for a hike in Yosemite. It was supposed to be an overnight hike, and he ended up getting lost and stranded, or at least he sort of stranded himself, anyways, for 6 days out in the wilderness before he was found. He's found alive. He's doing better now. And for anyone living in California, you might remember this other tragedy over a decade ago, I guess, of this Kim, James Kim. Him and his family were driving, and they were on like a backcountry road. The car had problems. They weren't really sure what to do. They didn't really have a lot of supplies, and ultimately the husband, James, went out looking for help, perished in his search for help, and the family, fortunately was found. The mom and the two daughters, I believe, were found. And so this hit Californians really hard, right? Because this guy, they were in their car. They weren't even like hiking. They were just driving on the road, and Californians are always driving everywhere, and it just really, a lot of Californians kind of just was like a slap in the face that something like this could happen to just kind of a regular guy. So this story definitely is definitely something that Californians, not all Californians are just couch potatoes and sitting on their butts. A lot of Californians enjoy the outdoors. So I can assure you that a story like this resonates, with the populace. Definitely resonates with me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about getting lost. I have zoomed into the approximate area where he was lost. They said he was found at the top of the I'm going to say it wrong. Wapama Falls. Okay, so this is in Yosemite. This is Wapama Falls. Now keep in mind, they've had recent snow cover, so it doesn't look like this. It looks all snowy. For what it's worth, we'll get a quick kind of 3D view. So he was somewhere, it doesn't say exactly, but it says above the falls. The falls are kind of right here, so somewhere in this general area. And I'm going to go over, let's get another quick look kind of real quick. Now what's really interesting about this area is, it kind of makes you wonder, like, if, a few things, like where was he hiking from? For one, if we go back to the map here, you can see a few different trails. The road is somewhat far away from Hetch Hetchy. It's a little hard to see with the terrain view on, but so if we get out of, you can see here, we have 120 down here and 108 up here. So I don't know where he was launching in from, but unless these are roads too. Are these roads? Evergreen Road. Man, maybe those are like little backcountry forest roads. Evergreen Lodge. Yeah, I guess. So he could have started relatively close, but at any rate, parked his car probably around here, went out for a hike overnight. Not exactly sure where, like, what part of the journey he got lost in, if he got lost on his way out or while he was out or on his way back. Not that it really matters necessarily, but so let's go back to the satellite. Some really interesting things here. Of course, we have the big landmark Hetch Hetchy, but you got to put yourself, in this guy's shoes. So everything's snow covered. Let's say that he's sort of in a little bit more, a region that's a little more nondescript. It's not as obvious as having a big reservoir next to you. Let's say he's up here, right? Up here in the snow. It's kind of crazy. I wish I could drop down on Google Earth. I suppose I could, but and we're pretty it's a little hard to tell the scale, but these, he would be as tall as, Some of these shrubs are about as tall as a man. So anyways, so somewhere, so just imagine, like if you were lost, like right here, right in the middle. Every way you look, it's flat. You have maybe a little bit of, a little bit of elevation difference, but nothing super obvious in the immediate area. So let's take a quick look at the terrain and see if that gives us any further clues. Oh, come on. Oh, it's because I'm in, let's go back to 2D. Oh, Lord. Let's go back to map. There we go. So, if he was down here by the reservoir, the terrain would be a little more obvious. Let's see. Yeah, that's getting a little steep over here. But kind of right, depending on where he was, even if he was right here, for example, you might say, well, he would have had a clear ridgeline on this side and a somewhat clear ridgeline on this side. But by that same token, it could be difficult for this person to decide, am I in this area? Am I in this area? Am I in this area? There's sort of 3 different ridgelines, and I'll go over to paint real quick so I can kind of illustrate a little more what I'm talking about. Grab a fat color here. So, like, let's say we have 3 potential areas he could have been. He could have been, let me come up just a little bit. Okay, so let's say, he could have been here, 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 or maybe here, right? So potential places that he could be. Now let's draw, oops, I wanted that to be red. Okay. Now let's draw some ridge lines. You'll see the point I'm trying to make kind of slowly. There's kind of a ridge over here. So you can see that if you're lost, and presuming you don't have a GPS, I'm going to presume that he didn't have a GPS and or didn't have a cell phone with GPS capabilities. Or maybe he just didn't have coverage. Sometimes cell phones have true GPS. Sometimes their GPS is based on the cell towers and it's like a simulated GPS. At any rate, say you're lost. It's a whiteout condition. You have a compass. You even have a topographical map, but you don't know if you're over here, over here, over here, or over here. You have good reason to believe that you're in one of these areas, but you're not 100% sure which one. Now, what are your options? Well, obviously your options are to stay put or to try to get back or try to get somewhere. And now, depending on whether or not you think you know where you are, trying to get back may or may not be viable. For example, let's say that the guy parked over here at the base of the falls. Depending on where he is, if he says, oh, I think I'm north of the reservoir, I'm just going to go south. If he's over here, he's going to end up over here. If he's over here, he's going to end up over there. If he's over here, he might do okay. If he's over here or over here, depending on how far he goes, he might ultimately hit Hetch Hetchy. Would he know it's Hetch Hetchy? Well, not sure. Depends. Probably. Especially because it has such a unique shape. But you can see that, and of course, whether or not he knew he was close to this body of water would have made an enormous difference in, his decision making as far as whether or not he thought he was going to find his way out. For example, going back to the paint here, if he did not know where he was in relation to that body of water, he might have just easily thought, well, I'm going to go north. Well, if the guy goes north, and he's parked over here, he's going to end up way the heck, even worse in the middle of nowhere, off into lands of endless bodies of water and ridges and peaks. And even if you have a topographical map, do you really think you're necessarily going to be able to tell this lake from that lake from this lake? Granted, there's two lakes over here and these ridges are different than these ridges. But the point is, up close, this little lake looks a lot like these little lakes. Now, granted, there's different levels, but, they might be covered in snow. This ridge looks like this ridge. This stream looks like this stream. It looks different on a map, but speaking from experience, especially with the snow conditions, you're really not necessarily going to tell, especially with these multiple trails, right? I mean, there is a little bit of difference in that, let's say you have a trail really close to a ridge, he might have a reasonable belief that he's on this trail or this trail as opposed to this trail or that trail. Same token, if he has a trail around a little piece of water, maybe he would be over here, maybe he could be over here. If he has a trail that splits off in a certain way, he might think that he's over here, or he might think that he's over here, or he might think that he's over here. So, or he could be over here, or he could be over here. That's the really tricky part with navigating, is even when you have a compass, even when you have directions, even if you know where the North Star is, when you're in the thick of it, it can be a little more challenging to say, for example, track how far you've gone. He might not have a good sense of how far you've gone. Not everyone, and I certainly don't typically do, count how many steps or try to track your distance. Generally, of course, when you're outdoors, you want to track where you are. You don't want to wander around aimlessly. If he started off, let's say he wanted to hike to Cherry Lake, you would want to have some idea that you're going to hike from here along this trail and then up to Lake Eleanor and then curve that around here, something like that, And hopefully you would be good enough with the compass, and there would be, even if there weren't directions on posts and whatnot, on trails there often are. But if there aren't, you'd want to be good enough to say, okay, we're going to go west a little bit, then we're going to go north. And if we do this for, a couple hours and we don't hit Lake Eleanor, then we definitely made a wrong turn or, something. So just a really, really interesting thing. This guy was fortunate that they were looking for him and that they ultimately ended up finding him. It's possible if he was a single guy that was unemployed and didn't tell anyone where he's going, it's possible that people might not have looked for him for a while. I don't know what their policy is on like parked vehicles. If they tow someone's vehicle, are they going to check? Like, why is this vehicle here? Did this guy go camping? What's going on? Are they going to check his Facebook page? Or are they just going to tow his car? And, how does that work, right? So really, really interesting stuff. Hopefully the screen capture works out okay. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and keep prepping.